A lot of people are struggling with saying no to their bosses and setting boundaries. Are you one of them? You don't think that you can, but you know that you need to. So I'm going to show you how. So stick around. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss the thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. Before we move forward, I'm going to take a second to just ask that you leave a comment or a review and to also share it with a friend so that they can be made aware of what we're doing here, which is trying to grow our careers. So, jumping into today's topic, maybe you are feeling overworked and overwhelmed and you're just not quite sure what to do because every time it seems that you turn around, your boss is giving you something else to do, and you just cannot find the enough hours in the day to get this work done. This is a problem, and it's a problem because people struggle. They have difficulty saying no, or at least pushing back and causing their bosses to think twice before proceeding to delegate additional tasks and projects. I had a former colleague, recently ask about this very thing, about setting boundaries, because it is such a difficult thing for a lot of people to do. And especially when you consider the work context, it's one thing in your personal life when you have to push back and say no. And that in and of itself can be very difficult for a lot of people. But when you consider the fact that the purse strings are tied to a particular person or group of people at your job, and pushing back might be problematic, or at least you perceive it that way, then it makes you cautious to say that you can't do something because most of us, when we go to work, we want to do a good job. We want to step in and assist wherever we can, and we want to be a team player. But sometimes when you take those things and they're a little bit skewed, you may be the very one who's ending up doing all of the work, and your boss is just continuing to delegate and not really realizing what's going on. Now, that might be a little bit generous because we recognize that there are some bosses out here who they don't really care. So we're going to get into some of the reasons why it's difficult to set those boundaries and to say no. Because depending on the boss, depending on their personality, it may be more of an art that you have to draw out in order to show them, look, this is not the thing that I can continue to do. I can't continue to work at this peak performance and get all of this work done. So, some of the reasons why it is difficult and a challenge for people to say no, well, part of that has to do with our own personalities. If you are not one who is comfortable with conflict, and most people are not, and even if you are comfortable with conflict, it is a challenge to say that you are unable or unwilling to do something. And it might not be that you're unable or unwilling. It may be that you just don't have enough time to get it done. And there should not be an expectation that you will work around the clock in order to get work done. But there is that level of fear that might creep in that would cause you to say, "Oh, I can't say no, but I just don't have enough time to get it done." Well, the longer you wait to indicate to your boss that this is not a desirable situation, the more difficult it will become once you present that, look, I didn't get the work done. So you start to miss deadlines. It might even start to affect your mental health, your body, because stress brings a host of issues to the body that you really just don't want to tread into those waters. So you want to be aware that fear can drive you to do things that you might not otherwise do. And so this is definitely one reason why some people just avoid saying no and setting boundaries altogether. And another reason is guilt. If you're a people pleasing type personality, you feel guilty when you tell people that you cannot do something. Another reason why this is problematic is you constantly put yourself in a situation, or you constantly find yourself in a situation where you are overwhelmed and overworked because people are not even aware that this is what is happening with your workload. You just continue to take it, and you never pause, you never throw out those stop sticks to say, this is unsustainable and we have to do something different. And because you feel guilty about it, it is difficult for you to just utter the words that this is not something that we should be doing. Um, and then there's also that perfectionist. The perfectionist thinks that they can get everything done and they can get everything done the correct way. They can get it done timely and accurately. And you continue to accept these projects and say yes without really giving any forethought as to what this is actually doing to you. You don't want to be seen as the workhorse because the workhorse gets pigeonholed and people will constantly turn to you and pour things on you because you've just accepted it. And that's definitely not the place where you want to be. And it's a good thing to be known as someone who can get things done, but at what cost? Because everything has a cost. Another thing that we want to make sure that we highlight as to why it's difficult to say no is because some people are just manipulative. There are people who are in leadership positions who are manipulative. They will do whatever they can to get you to do the work. I have heard about it. I have seen it. It is not a good place to be in. And quite frankly, it's a sad state of affairs when leadership has allowed this type of behavior to carry on and take place because it's a scar on the organization and it takes a long time to heal because the people who are on the underside of that, they're the ones who are feeling it, and it's definitely not good for them. So if you have a boss who is using manipulation, they're using scare tactics, they're trying to make you think as if everything is urgent and it has to be done right now. They're pressing you and they're not really giving you the appropriate time to think through and understand what is going on. Where does this fit into the grand scheme of things? And so you're kind of left with either do it or else. And we definitely don't want to be there. So, I wanted to give you at least five different things that you can do. These are five ways that you can approach a situation with your boss that might require you to really truly say, no, no, this is not something that I should do, and to set those boundaries. Because again, overwork leads to burnout. You're feeling overwhelmed. All of these things can have a level of response, or your body will have a response to these things and they might not work out well if you prolong them. So we want to address them. And so, of course, I love action words, the good old fashioned verbs. Uh, these things are going to be clarify, assess, offer, and accept. Okay, so starting with clarify. Your boss comes to you and they say that they want you to take on this project. They want you to oversee something. They're delegating something to you. Well, you want to pause and you want to say, what exactly is it that you're asking me to do? You want specifics. You want to understand, what is this task? Does it fall under my scope? What are the deadlines? What are the expectations of the outcomes? You want to go through all of those things. And again, be specific because you don't want someone to give you something that it's obscure to you and you're not really sure what it is or how it fits into what you do. So ask those questions. Number two, assess. And by assess, I want you to assess more specifically, how does this fit into the scope of the work that you were hired to do? And not only that, is this something that would be of interest to you? Does this help you to enhance your skill set? Is it going to help you along your professional development, along your growth development? You need to understand what are the ramifications of taking on this additional task or this project, because it should play into the grand picture of what it is that you're trying to do. Now, of course, part of the reason why you're there is to help the organization achieve its goals, but you can do two things simultaneously and both parties can win, which is why it's important to clarify with that first action item and now to assess how this fits in to your work. Number three, offer. You want to offer an alternative, because once you've gone through and you've understood what the task is, what is it that's being asked, and you've definitely assessed where this might fit, or if it does fit, you want to offer an alternative because sometimes leaders, bosses do not even realize that there are alternatives to having one particular person do a particular thing. And this is why it's important to offer an alternative. because you might see things from a different vantage point that the boss does not see. So while you might be saying, okay, well, I think it would be more appropriate for this department or this particular person to handle this task, this is what I think we can do in the meantime. So you have to exercise some discernment and understand what the context and the circumstances are before you can proceed with doing that. But you definitely want that to be in your pocket so that you can pull that out and offer something that would be of assistance, because you definitely want to look like you're a problem solver, and doing something along those lines will do exactly that. And number four, you want to accept. Now, accept when it comes to a situation like this, recognize that there may be some risk because, again, you will know better what your particular boss's personality is like, what the situation is within the organization where you're working. The stress level might be high. There may be some turmoil. Who knows? There are a lot of things that might be at play here. But you want to accept that there may be some pushback from your boss, and there might be some consequences as a result. But you are your best advocate. No one else can advocate for you as well as you can. So now is the time to stand up for yourself. And you don't have to outright say no, but you definitely want to be aware that there's a way for you to proceed with setting those boundaries and and providing them an alternative so that they can still get the work done, but it might just be with someone else doing it and not you. And so after you've gone through those things, and the boss is still at this point where it has to be you, there's no other way. Okay, well now you need to inform them of exactly what it is that you're doing, because what we want to avoid is walking into a situation where you're being asked to do something and you realize that this is not even something that's in the scope of your employment. You want to inform them of what it is that you're doing, that you're working on. What are your deadlines, the level of difficulty, and how long you've been working on them if these are things that have taken more than just a couple of weeks to complete. There are a lot of things that play into the type of information that you need to share with your boss, because you don't just want to, well, I just don't have time. You don't want to just say things like that. You want to be very specific, because people need examples and they need to understand exactly what it is that's going on in order for them to make an informed decision. So at that point, if the boss is saying that it has to be you that does this work, well, now you share with them exactly what it is that you're working on, what your team is working on, if you're leading a team or overseeing a project, and you want them to tell you which one of these things on my list should I stop doing or should be suspended, and give me the deadlines, because now they need to play a more active role in how some of these things are being prioritized, because you still have to have some relief. And what you're trying to help them to understand is that you have a pretty heavy workload and you're trying to manage it, but the more that they add on, the more difficult and challenging it is for you to manage it. So they need to offer some assistance there. And maybe you have some suggestions. So be prepared to offer some suggestions. I've been working on this. I know that maybe John is looking for some opportunities. Maybe we can pass this on to John. This is not an opportunity to just try to pass work off, but it is a chance for you to share that yes, you've thought through this. You want to offer some solutions and some alternatives, but it's going to take some communication between the two of you to help move past that step. And these are the things that I think are extremely important, and this is how those conversations can really work out so that you can make some headway, you can set those boundaries, and you can stand a little taller knowing that you've stood up for yourself, especially in a time when no one else really understood. Maybe they didn't really understand what was going on. So you've provided some clarity to them. And I can tell you that this has happened to me a number of times over my career. I know that this is not something that's unique. I would say that for me, no, I do not. While I don't like confrontation, I don't shy away from confrontation. And by confrontation, and confrontation might not even be the most appropriate word because it does tend to have a negative connotation, but I will address things that I think need to be dealt with. And if my boss or my leader has come to me, which they have in the past, and they've asked for reports to be completed, or they've already committed to providing things to a whole group of people in another department, or maybe because they've gotten pressure from their boss, a number of reasons as to why they've done that. But because they are unaware completely of what's going on, that might be purposeful on their end. I don't know. But because they weren't completely aware, it was my job to make them aware. Okay, well, we can do this, but this is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to take in order to get this. Something else has to be pushed to the side and put on hold if you're still wanting me to push forward with this latest request that you've made. And because they want to look good and they want to appear as if they have it all together, well, then the onus is on them. They can make the decision, and that's fine with me. But I'm making you aware that I can't do everything that you've asked, because I don't have the capacity to do all of these things. So make sure that you get on the same page, because, again, bosses are not always clear. And especially the higher up that they are on the org chart, they can sometimes be completely out of touch with what it takes to carry out the daily work, that gets them the information that they need. So remember that saying no is hard, but it's okay. Staying silent will cost you much more in the end if you determine or decide that you are not going to speak up for yourself. And sometimes you just need to hang up the cape and stop trying to save everybody. It is not your job to come in and save everyone. If the boss continues to commit themselves and overcommit themselves, and that means that it's coming down to you, well, at some point, you need to throw the stop sticks and you need to throw the barriers up, and you just need to say, look, we have to find another solution in order to get this work done, because this is not sustainable. We're not going to be able to continue to do this. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you about this, because I know that a lot of people have some difficulty. And maybe you need to sit with someone and to have some conversation so that you can role play and formulate a plan so that the next time that this comes up, you can deal with it. And if you're already in the midst of a situation where this has occurred and you just haven't yet formulated how you will respond, well, use these tips to walk through how you want that to look. Of course, everything doesn't usually play out the way that we envision it, but you will think better and you will feel better after dealing with and addressing directly the situation and being able to set that boundary for your boss. And I can assure you that you will have the respect in this situation because you stood up for yourself, and that's what's really important. So, what is one area where you can address this? So, I want you to think through that and I want you to apply it, because, again, this is not something that's just set aside for the work environment and the workspace. This is also something that is applicable to everyday life and how you engage people within your own personal sphere. So, so take the opportunity to stand up for yourself and set those boundaries, because they're extremely important. And we have reached the end of our episode, and I'm so glad that you took the time to listen. So thank you for that. And a reminder that boundaries are not walls, they are just bridges to a healthier and more sustainable career. And you have to set them along the way. And you can determine where it's appropriate to do that. Because, again, you're your own best advocate. So be thoughtful, be wise, and be strategic. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters. So make it count. I'll talk to you next week.